Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and today we're going to be discussing AutoMapper within our .NET 6 Web API. We're going to be seeing how we can actually utilize it in order for us to transform objects from one type to another. We're going to be seeing how we can actually make it easy for anyone who's trying to consume our APIs and basically have a much more better response type for every single request which is coming into our API. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It will really help the channel. As well, if you'd like to support me, please consider supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. Now, grab your cup of coffee and let's get started. So first of all, what is AutoMapper? AutoMapper is simply a library that allows us to transform one object to another. As simple as that. It will take in one object and it will basically produce a different object. And we can configure the way that we want to transform these objects any way we want. In today's video, what we're going to be doing first is we're going to be creating an application. We're going to be installing the AutoMapper packages, and then we're going to be creating a controller. Within that controller, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having all of the actions inside those controllers without the AutoMapper implementation, and then we're going to be seeing how once we implement AutoMapper, how the simplicity of our API is going to be there, as well as how we can actually have a much more better API endpoints, basically because we have our much more concise objects that we can actually utilize. So first of all, let's get started by creating our application. So inside our terminal, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a new web API, and this web API is going to be .NET new web API -n, and I'm going to call it Mapper app. You can call it whatever we want. Perfect. Now that the application has been created successfully, the second thing is what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to open it in Rider. Now that AutoMapper is open, let's see our application. So we can see it here. Let's open up Program.cs. Perfect. Everything looks fine. Now let's open our terminal. And inside our terminal, I'm just going to do .NET build to make sure everything is building as it should be. Perfect, as our application build. So the first step, as we have said, we need to install the packages, and these are going to be the AutoMapper packages that's going to allow us to utilize AutoMapper within our application. So to do that, let's remove this. We're going to put .NET add packages, AutoMapper. This is the first package. Perfect. And now the second package is going to be a package that will allow us to actually utilize AutoMapper within .NET, which is going to be allow us to inject it within our application. So it's going to be a dependency injection package for AutoMapper. .NET add package AutoMapper .extensions .microsoft .dependency injection. Perfect. Now if we go to our CS proj, we can see here that I have my AutoMapper installed, as well as my dependency injection for AutoMapper is already installed. Perfect. So once we have done that, because basically we're going to be dealing with objects, the first thing what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a folder called models. We're going to, inside this models folder, we're going to be having the first basically database table representation. We're going to be utilizing a driver table. And for the sake of this video, we're not going to be connecting to an actual database. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be utilizing an in-memory database just to make this video a bit quick, and it's not going to be a few hours video. So first of all, we're going to be creating the model, and then we're going to be seeing how we can create our controller, and then basically from there, we'll see how we can actually implement all of the AutoMapper stuff that we want. So in the root directory, we're going to be creating a new directory, and we're going to call it models. And inside this models folder, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be creating a new class. And this class, we're going to be calling it driver. Perfect. And inside this driver class, we're going to have, first of all, a GUID as the ID. So that's the first thing. Then we're going to have string as first name. Gonna have a string as last name. we're gonna have an integer as a driver number. We're gonna have the date added, so it's gonna be date time, and we're gonna say here date added. We're gonna have another one as well, date time, date updated. Let's do as well date time. Actually, not date time here. We're gonna just put integer as status. And lastly, we're gonna put int world championship. Okay. So basically this is a very simple model where basically we have a driver and we have different specification properties for that driver. So once we have done that, the next step for us is we're going to be creating the controller. And inside our controllers folder, we're going to basically add, see, controller, and we're going to call the drivers controller. Perfect. Inside this drivers controller, what we're going to be doing is let's take whatever we have here and build on top of it. So let's take this. We're going to make it here. Let's take all of this all the way to here. We don't need any more than that. And then don't need this. We don't need this. Okay. So now this one needs to be drivers controller. This one here, and we don't need this. Okay, so now we have a very basic and bare-bone controller. So within this basic and bare-bone controller, what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be adding some endpoints. And these endpoints, basically, they're gonna be representing the CRUD operation that we can do on our controller. Once we add them, we're going to be seeing how we can actually communicate with these endpoints without utilizing AutoMapper. Then we're going to be basically adding the AutoMapper configuration, and we're going to see how that's going to change. So first things first, because also we're going to be utilizing an in-memory database. So we're just going to be creating a list of drivers on top of this controller and using it as our in-memory database for now. So let's do this right now. It's going to be private static list of drivers. I'm gonna say drivers equal new, oops, and let's just fix those references. Perfect. So now the first endpoint we're gonna be doing is gonna say get all drivers, and here we're just gonna put public action result get drivers. And basically what we're going to be doing here, we're going to put var drivers equal drivers dot where. We now just want to get whatever driver are active, so status equal to 1, and we're going to make it to list. So let's see, why is this not happy? Oh, I'm gonna say here all drivers. And here needs to be equal to 1. And then here all I'm gonna say is return okay with all drivers. So that's gonna be our first endpoint. The second one is gonna be basically, the other one is gonna be adding a driver. So it's gonna be HTTP post. And that's gonna be public action result create driver. And it's gonna take a driver. I'm gonna call it data. And that's not create, it's create. So with the C. And here all I'm gonna say in if model state dot is valid, do some sample validation, and then we're gonna have drivers dot add data. I'm gonna return create
created at action. I'm gonna say get driver, which is something we have not created yet. I'm just gonna pass new data.id, which is the ID that has been generated for it, and just gonna pass the data. Very simple. And in case something went wrong, I'm just gonna return new JSON result, and I'm gonna say something went wrong, and I'm gonna pass a HTTP status code. HTTP status, or it's gonna be, I think, status code, yeah, equal 500. So that's in case something goes wrong and we need to send back. So that's something. Actually, let's do it like this. Okay. So once we have done that, actually let's keep it back as it was, easier to read for now. Now let's do the get driver one. Basically, get driver is gonna get us a single driver, and we're gonna put public. Actually, yeah, public. Let's put HTTP get, and this one's gonna take an ID because we're passing an ID, and we're gonna say public action result get driver. It's gonna take a GUID as an ID. I'm gonna say var item equal drivers dot first or default x.id equal ID. Very simple. And what we're gonna be doing, if item equal null, I'm gonna return not found. Else we're gonna be returning okay with the item. And let's add a couple more. So let's add the put statement, for example, HTTP put, and we're gonna also, let's pass the ID for it, template. Actually, I can just do ID. It's gonna be public action result update driver, and it's gonna take GUID for the ID as well as the driver data. And all we need to do, first of all, if the ID that we are passing in the URL is different than driver.id, actually it's gonna be data.id. In case it's different, we're gonna be returning bad request. So far, everything here we're doing is a simple CRUD operation on a controller. Very simple, straight to the point. We're not really adding anything new. So it's just simply CRUD adding, updating, deleting items to our driver table. That's all. So here, let's put var existing driver, for example, equal drivers dot first or default, and we're gonna match them on an ID equal data.id. And if existing driver equal null, return not found. Else what we're gonna put, existing driver dot, for example, let's say driver number, we're gonna say data dot driver number, existing driver dot first name equal data dot first name, existing driver dot last name equal data dot last name, existing driver dot world championships equal data dot world championships. Okay. And once we have done that, we're just gonna return a new content, and that will tell us basically that the update has been completed successfully. So I think that's a good implementation. Maybe we'll add a delete later on, but I think for now that should be okay. Let's add a delete. Since we already added everything, why not add a delete? So let's put, again, it's gonna be HTTP get, also ID, and public iAction result, and we're gonna make a delete driver. All it's gonna take is the GUID with an ID, and here once we have that, the next thing it's gonna be var existing driver equal drivers dot first or default, and all we're doing is dot ID equal ID existing driver. Okay, so once we have this existing driver here, so once we have done that, the next one we're gonna say if existing driver is not equal to null. Actually, if it's equal to null, we're gonna return not found, and else what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna say existing driver dot the status equals 0, which means that we have deleted it, and then we're gonna be returning we can return it similar, so let's return existing driver, or we can return no content. Let's return no content. Okay, so basically right now this will summarize the full CRUD operation. So what we've done here is we have created and get all, insert, update and delete, and basically within all of that what we're doing is and as well get by ID. So once we have created these CRUD operations, what we're going to be doing right now, we're going to be experimenting with it. Once we actually make sure it's working as it should be, the next step is we're going to be implementing AutoMapper and see how we can actually enhance this API by actually utilizing AutoMapper for the objects. So now let's run this. Okay, we can have here that it's not happy with something, so we can see get driver explicit method. So let's see that. Okay, let's make this as HTTP GET, and let's try this again. And it's telling us that get drivers by ID. Where is that? Okay. Needs to be unique. So what we can do here is we can put route, and we can see here get driver. Let's try this now. Still complaining, so we can see get drivers action required a unique path. Okay, we can see here that we have our get driver, and let's see. Okay, so what we need to do is we needed to make this instead of a get, a delete. Apologies. And let's try this now. Okay, perfect. So let's take this here. So now that we can see that we have all of our endpoints available, so we can see here at now it will not do anything because we don't have any drivers. We can see it's an empty array. Let's try to adding a single new driver. So let's try it out. Let's keep the same GUID. First name, I'm gonna put myself. Last name, number, let's say 144, status 1, world championship 0. So let's execute this, and we got a confirmation with a 201, and now if I execute all, we can see that I got my list of the driver. Perfect. Let's add another one. Let's change this GUID. We'll put this as 7, and here we're gonna put Lewis. We're gonna say here Hamilton. Driver number 44, status 1, world championship 7, but it should be 8. And let's put here, and let's execute. And here we can see that we have now 2, and let's do the third one. Actually, that should be more than enough. So now that we have these, and you can see here first, so the first thing that we want to discuss when it comes to this, if we take a look at the actual body, we can see here that when we're returning the status, date updated, date added, we're returning first name and last name are completely different fields. As well, when we're creating it, basically we're passing the ID, which we shouldn't, because basically that should be something that the API will need to auto-generate. The date added, date updated is something that we should not be doing. It's the API also which needs to be taking care of that, as well as the status. So within AutoMapper, let's see how we can actually create an object. Actually, let's see first how we can simplify this, and then we can see how we can utilize AutoMapper. So I'm gonna keep this tab open, and I'm gonna put a new one here, so we can actually compare every single new version that we're doing. So if we come here, and let's go back to Rider, and we stop this. So first things first is, when I'm creating a new driver, I don't want to basically to have all of this information available. So basically, where is it? If I go to a driver, I don't want to add all of this. All I want to add is first name, last name, driver number, and world championship. I want the rest to be taken care of by the API itself. I want to make it as simple as possible for anyone who's consuming my API to just send a simple information, and then basically the API will take care of the rest of it. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go back to the application, and inside the root directory, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating a new folder. Actually, inside the models, I'm going to be creating a new directory. I'm going to call this DTO. DTOs. And inside this DTOs, I'm going to say create a new directory again, and I'm going to say this incoming DTO. Actually, just incoming, and we're going to say outgoing. Okay, so the incoming DTO, basically we're going to, every single request which is coming in to our application, any DTO which is stand for data transfer object, which basically means an object that the client of the API will be sending to us. So any incoming or any object which is the client going to send to us is going to go into the incoming DTOs, and any object that we are sending back, it's going to be basically also in the outgoing DTO. So incoming for everything coming in, and outgoing is going to be for everything that the API will generate and actually the client will receive. So inside the incoming DTO, the first DTO that I want to create, or data transfer object, is going to be driver for creation DTO. And inside of this, as I mentioned, all I want to have send is the first name. And then I'm gonna put last name, and I want their driver number, which is gonna be an int. And then lastly, what I wanna add is their world championship. World championships. Okay, so now that I have that, championships within us. Okay, so once I have done that, let's take this and let's go back to our drivers controller. And here, instead of creating a driver in this way, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to update it. So instead of utilizing the entire driver object, which is basically my database table reference, I'm going to basically utilize the driver for creation DTO, and then I'm going to do the mapping to the driver object. So let's do this. Here it's going to be driver for creation. Let's fix those references. And here we can see first start complaining. So how do we fix that? It's very simple. We're going to put var underscore driver equal to new driver. And let's fill the information from here. So what do we have here? We have an ID. This ID needs to be auto-generated. So we're going to put a new GUID. So this way, first of all, the API will take care of this. The second, the status is going to be 1 because the API is going to take care of it. Date added again. Date updated, let's keep it the same. Oops. Date time. And then we have driver number, and this driver number is going to come from the data object. And then we're going to have the first name, it's going to also come from the data object. Dot first name. We're going to have the last name. And we're gonna also have the World Championship. Okay, so now what we have here is basically we have created a new object which is called driver. We have manually mapped everything from the DTO, incoming DTO, which is driver for creation, to this object. And once we have mapped this out, what we're doing right now is we're going to utilize this new object in order for us to save it in the list. So right now, if I just take underscore driver and store it here, and instead of returning data, I'm going to be returning that driver, which is something else that we need to take a look at later on. So now if I do this, and let's run this, see how it's going to change my API. So now that it's running, let's go back into our web browser, and I'm just going to refresh this. So here we can see this is the initial DTO to create an object. Actually, this was the original body request. And now if I come here and click on post, we can see that it's way more simpler. So this is how it was before. Where is it? So this is how it was before. ID, first name, driver, a lot of information. And here we can see it's much more simpler with 4 input. So let's update this. So here, first of all, let's see, because I think this is a static list, so we're not gonna have anything here exactly. So we're gonna add the first driver, and we're gonna put Lewis, and here we're gonna put Hamilton, driver number 44, World Championship 7, although it should be 8, execute. And we can see here, we're still getting this ugly response, but that's fine for now. And if we take a look here and we hit execute, we'll see it's adding. So we are able to see how we can actually simplify our input, or basically the object that we are sending to the API. And basically we are delegating much more of the work to the API to do, instead of having everything being provided by the client. And we can see here how we can actually doing all of this mapping manually. So what we're doing is we're mapping that DTO that is incoming from the API to incoming from the client, sorry, to the object inside the API, and we're doing all of this manually. And here what we're going to be doing right now, we're going to be seeing how AutoMapper is able to help us with this. We're going to be creating a set of rules for AutoMapper, and AutoMapper will be basically able to take care of all of these mappings for us instead of us doing it manually. So let's see how we can actually implement this. So let's go back to Rider. And inside Rider here, inside our root folder, I'm going to be creating a new directory. And inside, first of all, let's create it called profiles. And the reason we created a directory called profiles, because basically here what we're doing is for every single object that we want to map, or basically let's say currently we have the driver object, which is basically representing a table in the database. For that object itself, which is the driver, we could have multiple mappings. We can have, for example, for creation, for update, for returning back information to the user. So what we're going to doing inside this profiles, we're going to be creating a single profile for every single table in the database. And basically from there, what we'll be doing is we're going to be creating those mapping inside that single profile. And here a profile is just like an instruction set that we're going to be doing, or giving AutoMapper for it to actually know how it will map the object one to another. So inside the profiles here, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be add a new class, and we're going to call the driver profile. Perfect. And what we need to do is we need to inherit from the profile class, and basically we can see here it's coming from AutoMapper. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a constructor, because everything for AutoMapper is going to be coming within a constructor, because once it's constructed, it will actually know how it will map it. And then we're going to be basically creating a map. We're telling it here that you need to actually start implementing a map between whatever object that we want to give you. And the way we do that is AutoMapper will provide us with a method called create map, and that create map will basically allow us to do these mappings manually. So here what we're going to be saying is we're going to be creating this map for the driver, and basically it's going to be from the driver creation DTO to the driver. So basically what we're telling it here is this mapping that we're currently creating is going to be mapping every information from an object which is called driver for creation DTO that we just created, and those data will be need to transform into the driver. So we're transforming the object from driver for creation to driver And we can see here the order is really important, because if we switch it up and we put a driver and then we put a driver for creation, AutoMapper will think that we're taking information from the driver in the class and we're transforming it to the driver for creation. So be very careful here about the order. First of all, it needs to be whatever the source and then the destination. So the source is driver for creation and destination is driver. So once we have done that, now we can start the actual mapping, and we'll put here .forMember. We're gonna be, let's fill it up and we can explain it. And we're gonna say the destination is gonna be des.id, and we're gonna see here also so it's gonna be options dot map from, and then here all I'm gonna say is src. Can you see it? Let's see if it's a fail. See it? Oh yes, you can see it. src, and we're just gonna be creating a GUID. So we're gonna say, hey, here, just put GUID dot new GUID, and we're just gonna close it. Okay. So let's explain this. This is adding a lot of. Okay, not sure what happened. Okay, let's put here a semicolon at the end. Okay. So let's explain what's happening here. So first of all, what we did is, let's make this smaller so it will be easier to see. Yes, it's better like this. So basically what we did is we're creating a map from the source to the destination, and we're telling it that for every member, and this we need to repeat for every single one of them, whenever you see that you have an ID that we need to fill, what you need to do is you need to create a new GUID for it. And this here was reflected inside our controller by us creating the GUID manually. So what we're saying is, in order for you, whenever you want to create this new driver profile, the ID for it should be automatically generated. Do not expect it, it's coming from the driver creation. And that's why we can see here that this is within this mapping, it's going to be automatically responsible for creating this map for us. We're not going to be creating the ID for it. AutoMapper is here going to be responsible for generating the ID for us. We're basically delegating this this responsibility for AutoMapper for it to do it for us. So that's going to be the first one. So the second one that we're going to be adding, let's see, it's going to be .forMember. And right now what we're going to be doing is, before we do that, you can see here it says destination member and basically member option. So the destination member is where do we want to put the information, and the member option configuration is what information do we want to put there, just for a clarification. So right now what we're going to be doing is just going to put the first name. So destination is going to be destination.firstname, and we can put similarly to what we have done before. So it's going to be options, and it's going to be options again, .map from, and I'm going to put src, and I'm going to put here, for example, src .first name, and basically here we can see that this automatically got handled by first name for us. Don't have to do anything else rather than just making sure, let's make this on the same line, let's making sure that it's mapping from one to another. Now let's do the same thing for last name. So forMember destination dot last name, and it's gonna be options dot map from, and I'm gonna put src dot let's say last name. Perfect. Then what I'm gonna be doing is for driver's number, driver's number. So instead of me just copying writing it again, I'm just gonna copy paste, it's way faster, and just change the value. So it's gonna put here driver's number to driver's number, and we're gonna have world championships, And the last one, it's gonna be the status. And instead of the status, it's gonna be 1. Because I wanna input the value 1. So basically here we can see it makes, let's go a bit higher. So here you can see one more. So here you can see that I have all of these mappings automatically configured for within AutoMapper. So whenever I'm having those creations, so whenever I'm trying to create a new object, all I'm saying is this ID is gonna map to a new ID. So, and basically for first name, I'm taking the first name that has been provided for me from the DTO object. Last name, I'm taking from the DTO object. World Championship from the DTO object, as well as the driver number from the DTO. Everything else is being automatically created for me by the mapper. We still need to add the date created and date updated. So let's add it right now. So here, let's add them here, and here we're gonna put date created or date added. It's gonna be datetime.now, datetime.now, and the last one is gonna be date updated. It's also gonna be datetime.now, datetime.now. And basically we can see here that once we have specified this configuration, all we need to do right now is just update our, first of all, Program.cs. So our application will know that AutoMapper is installed, and basically it will know that a configuration for AutoMapper already exists. So that's going to be the first option, the first thing that we need to do. Then we need to update our controller by injecting AutoMapper inside the constructor and then actually utilizing it inside our actions. So let's see this right now. So let's go first to our Program.cs, and inside my Program.cs, it's gonna be a very simple implementation. I'm just gonna say builder.services.add AutoMapper, and here all I'm gonna say is I'm gonna app domain dot current domain dot get assemblies. And that's it. So what are we doing here? So basically what we're doing is we are telling our dependency injection container that you need to take into consideration that AutoMapper is there. And basically what AutoMapper is going to be doing right now, it's going to be basically actually scanning all of the DLLs that are being generated by our .NET application. And then once it scans them, it's going to automatically know that inside this DLL there's going to be these classes and these DTOs. And it's going to refer back to the profile that we have created in order for it to do the mapping. And we can see here that's actually doing some kind of smart work in the background where it's actually trying to figure out what are the DLLs that we have, and based on that it's going to be doing the mapping that we're going to be utilizing. So once we have done that, now we can go back to our driver controller, and the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're just going to be mapping the adding the mapper into our constructor. So here all I'm going to put is private, not profile, private, read only. It's gonna be AutoMapper. Actually, it's gonna be iMapper. I'm gonna put mapper, and then I'm just gonna take this, and then I'm gonna inject it here, and then it's gonna be underscore mapper equal mapper. And now once I have done that, now we can see here how we can actually abstract this into something way more simpler. So I don't have to do all of this all over again. So let me remove this. All I'm going to be doing right now is just having var underscore driver, which is the object that the variable that I want. And I'm going to utilizing the mapper dot map. And all I'm saying to the mapper is you need to create an object of type driver from the data object that you're creating. And as if you see here, all we have to do is add a single line, and that single line basically it will take care of all of the mappings that we have. It will take care of actually figuring out which objects needs to go to which objects, which configuration needs to go to which configuration, for example, and based on that we are able to utilize it directly. So right now let's take this for a test. So let's click on debug, and let's go back to our web browser. And inside our web browser here, what we're gonna be doing is let us just refresh this, and let's create a new driver, and I'm just gonna create a single driver for now, and this one we're gonna be called Lewis, and the last name Hamilton. Driver number is 44, and World Championship 7, although it should be 8, and then execute, and we can see here that's created successfully. And here basically if I click on try it out, execute, we can see I got back my drivers as they should be. Perfect. So let's do a quick recap on what we have done here. So first of all is we have created a profile, and this profile here basically we're able to map every single object from the incoming DTO to the actual driver information that we have. Every single one of them have a specific mapping, and the powerful thing about this is, let's say I want to make sure every single first name that comes in for any reason, I want it to be all in capital. So all I need to do that is I need just to manipulate this. So all I need to do is just say .to upper, and now every single input that I'm gonna input into my application is gonna be upper. Let's say I wanna add certain styling, for example, so I can just do something like that. I can use string concatenation, and inside the string concatenation I can say, let's put it something like this, and I can put, for example, I don't know, let me put driver number, for example. So it could be src.driver number, I don't know, something like that. And let's try it out. So all I'm doing here is just manipulating these profiles, and when I'm manipulating this profile, I'm able to actually adjust the input to my parameters. So if I stop this and I click on debug again, and now if I go and let's see, let's add a new, let's copy this instead of me trying to retype them again. And let's go to post, try it out, and let me paste this here and click on execute. We can see here that the first name has automatically been updated, so the driver number now became here, and then everything went to uppercase, and all of that has happened just because I was able to update the mapping to whatever I want basically. So this is the first item that we're going to be covering. So the second item here is we're going to be seeing how we can do the opposite. So now what we're doing is we are taking parameters from the user and basically creating this object. And now if we take a look at the response type that we're having, so we can see here that the response type, this is not really something that the user will see. So let's say I don't want to send the first name and last name independently. I want to just say name, and we're going to have the full driver name. I don't want to send the date updated, date added. I don't want to send the status. I just want to make it a simple object where the user will be able to consume, or basically the consumer will be able to consume easily. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating another DTO, which is going to be responsible for actually taking the object back, and then with the format that I want, and then I'm going to be utilizing AutoMapper to do the mapping for me. So let's do this right now. So let's go back to Rider, and inside my profile I'm going to go to the driver profile, and let's make this a bit smaller, and let's see how we can implement this here. So when we created the mapping between the incoming object and the actual object, as we said, we put driver DTO, driver for creation DTO first, and then we put the driver, the object that we wanted there. So now inside our outgoing folder here, inside our DTOs, inside the molders folder, we're going to be adding a new class, and I'm just going to call this driver DTO. Just going to be referring to the DTO that I'm going to be returning, and here I'm just going to be returning the full name. I'm going to be returning the driver, driver, it's going to be int driver number. I'm going to return a GUID, which is the ID, and lastly I'm just going to return the World Championship. Okay, so now that I have this champion, okay, so now that I have this DTO, I'm just gonna take this and I'm gonna go inside my driver profile, and I'm gonna be creating a new mapping for it. So if we go all the way down, and here after I finish the first one, I'm just gonna be basically creating this new one. And in order for me to create it, it's gonna be utilizing the create map, and here I need to specify from what to what. So it's gonna be from the driver to driver DTO. It's gonna ask me to fix those references, and then inside here I'm just gonna put dot for let's fix this dot for member, and all I'm gonna be saying here is the destination. It's gonna be the destination dot full name, and I'm gonna basically I'm gonna take the information from the object itself, that which is gonna be the driver. So I'm gonna put options dot map from, oh I forgot the comma, so it's gonna be map from. All I'm gonna be saying right now here is need to take, okay, let's see if you can see it perfectly. I think it's being hidden. Okay, and let's make this smaller. Yeah, so all we're gonna be saying here is gonna be the x dot first name, and the other one is gonna be x dot last name, and that's it. So here, for example, we were able to concatenate both of the first name and last name in a single sentence. So that's gonna be for the first one, and then we're gonna put another one which is gonna be dot for member, and destination as well. It's gonna be destination dot ID. It's gonna be very simple, this one, similar to what we had before. Options, it's gonna be options dot map from, and we're gonna put x.id, simple as that. And then now we're gonna put, let's copy this and so we can do it for the rest. So it's gonna be world championship as well as the driver number. So driver number, and last one is gonna be world championship. And let's put here world championship. And then all I'm gonna see is this. And now basically what I did here, I was able to create a full map, and this full map here is basically taking from the actual object, which is the database, and basically from that I'm putting it inside a DTO that I'm going to be utilizing to return to the users. So now all I need to do is go back to my controller, and here, for example, whenever I'm returning this driver, so instead of this, so let's take it simpler than this. So from here, instead of returning all of these drivers, all I'm going to be doing in order for me to utilize it is I'm going to be utilizing that map object that I have, and that I'm going to say, okay, whatever you have here inside this list, transform it to this type of list, not objects. So let's see how this will work. So here, all I'm going to be saying var drivers underscore drivers, for example, equal drivers, actually sorry, it's gonna equal mapper dot map. It's gonna take here, it's gonna return an I enumerable of what, of all drivers, actually of driver DTO, and it's gonna take an input of all drivers. So if you take a look here, and then we're gonna return this one. If you take a look here, basically, I'm taking an entire list of my objects, the object that I want to return, and I'm just mapping them automatically. I'm not creating a for loop to map them one by one. I'm not creating for each loop, for example. I'm not doing anything. All I'm just saying is, AutoMapper, take this list, check your profiles. If you have something there, map it for me and return it. As simple as that, with a single line, instead of creating a for loop, and basically try to map all of everything from there. So right now, if we execute this, let's go back to our Firefox. And before we do anything here, I think oh, well, I still have it here opened. Yes, so here this is the original one of how it's actually returning. Now let's see after we add a couple of one how it's gonna change. So I'm just gonna execute this again. Now we have this one we need to update, by the way, so but we'll do it step by step. So here we can see that we have created one, and now if I try it out and execute, we can see that I got the new format, which is the ID, full name, driver name, world championship, instead of actually having to deal with this full object. Now let me add another driver. So I'm gonna put here George, I'm gonna put Russell, 63 driver number, and world championship 0, and execute. And now if I come here and I execute this request, we can see it's a much more nicer and consistent, much more nicer and easy to understand object that's being returned from my API, rather from actually utilizing or basically the big object as it is coming from the database. And for example, another reason is I don't really want to send all of the information that's coming back, because some of them contain sensitive information and I don't want to really basically sharing that with the client. So that's why here creating a DTO object, which is data transfer object, to return is a much better way to actually utilize it, and a much more secure way as well. So now what we're going to be doing, and the last thing we're going to be implementing, is actually instead of returning all of this object here, I'm just going to be returning a concise object. And to do that, let's go back to our rider, and when we are creating a driver here, all I'm going to be doing is instead of actually returning this, all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to just put after this one here var new driver. I don't know, a new driver, for example. Naming things is the hardest thing in programming. I'm going to put underscore mapper dot map. I'm going to basically return to a driver DTO, and it's going to take the new driver that has been created. And I'm just gonna put here a new driver, and let's run this and see how it will work. So now that it's running, let's go back to my web browser, and now once I create a new driver, instead of receiving all of this, I should receive a nice concise object. So let's execute this again, and we can see here that I got a nice concise object at the end. So let's do now a quick summary of what we have covered today. So the first thing that we have done is basically we have creating a web API, we have created a controller, and we have created an object which represent a database. We have created an in-memory database rather than an actual database. And then what we did is we created some of the CRUD operation, create, delete, update, so on and so forth. So once we have done all of that, what we have seen is how we can actually interact with this API. We have seen the object that we are actually sending to the API and the object that we are receiving back. And we saw that there's a lot of room of implementation, of enhancements. And there we decided that we're going to be utilizing AutoMapper. So within that, we have installed the Nuget packages for AutoMapper. And then we created a profile, which basically stands for like the configuration for every single object that we want to map between two different items. So we created a profile for the drivers, and then we have created inside of it a mapping for all of the incoming traffic to create DTOs. To create a new object. As well, we have created a different mapping for all of the things that the API is going to be returning back to the users. And once we have done that, we have seen how the API experience has completely changed. Instead of having a big body of the object that we need to send, we have delegated all of this to the API itself, and the API is actually taking care of it and actually building it for us, rather than the client have to provide all of this information. And here we can see, although this is a very simple example, we can see the level of enhancement and the level of actually performance that we're going to be getting, and the level of how much we are making our API easy to use, just by utilizing utilizing this library. I hope this video has been helpful. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like it. And if you want to have access to the source code, please consider subscribing to my Patreon or buying me a coffee. And thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.